Hello, I'm Valerie Heavens, and one of the things that I really love to do is to support you in having peaceful, loving, and deeply fulfilling relationships. And that starts with a sense of self-mastery. That starts with experiencing inner peace. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed when you've gotten into a conflict with a loved one that often the conflict starts within us. Something starts to feel aggravated within our bodies, right? Something starts to feel uncomfortable and not quite right. And we start to look for what it is that's bothering us outside of us. And therefore, we'll often get into a conflict with a loved one. We'll find a way to blame that person for the fact that we don't feel okay within ourselves. Now, to realize this takes some introspection. And you might not have noticed that this is what's at the base of a lot of our conflicts. And I'd like you to understand the individual from a certain perspective, just to help us talk about this. And one of the ways that I'd like to work with you on that is by using this particular map of the individual that was developed by Roberto Assagioli, who also developed psychosynthesis. Now, if we think of the individual as having a center, a place from which we can act and make choices that feel really aligned with who we are, with what we are, with our higher spiritual ambitions, with our higher spiritual connections. And that's symbolized in this map by this line right here. Okay, it's basically a way that when we're centered, sometimes what we can feel when we are meditating is we actually can feel this energy going upwards. And it's going upward into a higher vibration. And in these higher vibrations, we access those wonderful feelings of love, peace, patience, joy, understanding, compassion. There's a whole number of higher spiritual qualities that we have access to when we're in our center. And that's one of the reasons it's often recommended that we meditate. And it's also a really good reason that we learn how to clear our mind and get out of those emotional contractions that we often feel. So let me just explain how these are developed in the individual from at least one perspective. We develop subpersonalities and states of being as we're growing up in order to make sense of our world, in order to get our needs met, in order to get what we want in life. And in this map, these are symbolized by these lines showing that we all have a number of subpersonalities and states of being within us. And they're often in our lower unconscious. So in this map, this symbolizes our lower unconscious, and there's an area of consciousness here where some of these subpersonalities start to peak up and we begin to become aware of them. And then we have our universal unconsciousness that we can tap into, where we can get guidance from, where we can get messages from. And of course, there's a lot more we could say about all of these things, but for this brief video, I want you to understand these subpersonalities, because that's where our reactivity buttons live. Okay, they live in these subpersonalities. So how are these developed? Well, suppose you're a young child and you really have this desire to do something special for your mom or dad. It's a way you're getting your love across to them. You might not realize that that's what you're doing, but that's really what's going on. And so take an example of a young child who's drawing a picture for mommy and daddy, or maybe just a picture for mommy. And the whole time she's drawing this picture, she's thinking about how much mom's going to love this. Okay, and she's putting all of this love and attention into it, thinking about how much Mom's going to love this picture. And then she goes and presents it to Mom. And Mom, coming from a place of, I have to teach my children to be, really conscientious and good at what they do, starts to correct the picture and say, oh, well, you could have done a little bit better here, sweetheart. You see how you drew that circle and then you colored outside of the lines? Well, if you really try hard to color inside the lines, right? And so Mom's just trying to do a good job at being Mom, and the child feels devastated because she had this big expectation build up about how Mom was just going to love this picture, and Mom was really going to get how much she loved her through this. And instead what happened was Mom somehow told her it wasn't good enough. So in this process, she takes on this attitude that I'm not good enough, or nothing I do is good enough. And this is the development, the beginning of a subpersonality. Now she begins to see the world through I'm not good enough. And at the same time, what happens is that an opposite subpersonality is developed. So there's a way that we fight these subpersonalities. And in doing that, we might also develop, this belief that, well, I'm actually better than others. The mind starts to want to protect us and help us to feel better about ourselves. So it'll start to say, well, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're better than other people. Just look at all these other people. You're way better than they are. So now we have two subpersonalities developed in opposites. One is I'm not good enough, and one of them is I'm superior. I'm better than you. And you'll find this, that both subpersonalities are alive within people who have this. And this is a very common belief and subpersonality. So in every subpersonality, we generally have a belief, some way that we made sense of our world by deciding something about ourselves or life or others. Others are ... Life is ... I am ... I'm invisible. We might make that decision. And then consequently the opposite forms of, I've got to get attention. Maybe I can do that by being the clown or the comedian, or by acting out in certain ways. So an opposite subpersonality forms to counter that one. In yoga, Patanjali talks about how the mind is constructed of opposites, and this is something that we're seeing here. And each of these opposites is actually a whole way of being. Generally, these subpersonalities have a posture, they have a voice, they have a way of being, and when we get triggered into them, something often doesn't feel quite right. How do we get triggered into these subpersonalities? Well, something somebody says in our adult life kind of is reminiscent of what happened when we were that young child. Perhaps somebody criticizes us, and because we felt criticized, when this subpersonality was born, all of a sudden we just reactive, right? Don't treat me that way. It's not okay. How dare you? How dare you not get my love? How dare you not? We often don't even realize that that's what's at the base of a lot of this. But all we get is a reaction, and often we're blaming that person for being a certain way. Because I feel really misunderstood. I feel really misunderstood here, right? And just like I felt misunderstood when I was a little kid, now as an adult, I feel misunderstood again, and it's bringing up all those little kid unresolved feelings within me. So that's where these reactivity buttons live. And there is a way to extricate them. They often were formed in the midst of some traumatic situation. And interestingly enough, you'll often remember these. They'll come up at different times in your consciousness. You'll hear the little voice inside of your mind speaking to you and talking about what decision you made at that time. You might go through life noticing this little voice saying, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone, or something that that child wanted to say when they were little and never had a chance to communicate. So that communication is still stored within you, and it needs to be communicated. It needs to be gotten to in order to resolve what's at the base of these reactivity buttons. And that's the kind of work that I really enjoy doing with you, is first of all helping you to bring these subpersonalities and reactivity buttons to consciousness, and then getting in touch with what beliefs you made in the midst of it, getting in touch with the emotional trauma, getting in touch with the communication that hasn't been delivered, and helping you to deliver it and resolve it, and helping you to basically see that you've taken on a way of being in order to accomplish something, in order to actually get something done. And there's often a better way to do it. And the better way is to do it from your center. So I encourage you to, first of all, go ahead and request the free report that I have for you, which tells you 6 different ways that you can get in touch with your beliefs, because that's often a good place to start. And if you feel inspired to want to clear some of these beliefs and emotional holdings, emotional contractions, please get in touch with me, because I'd love to work with you. I could either work with you in private sessions, one-on-one, or perhaps we could work together in a group. So please feel free to contact me at valerieheavens.com and request more information. Request a discovery session so that you and I can get together and talk. I meet with you through Skype. We can talk on the phone. It's always fun to talk face to face. I do teleconferences through Maestro Conference, where you'll have a chance to get together in small groups or in dyads with other people to work through some of your issues. There's a lot of different ways that I like to support you in this work. So I hope you'll take me up on it, because this is what I really love doing as my service to you. Hope to speak with you soon. Bye for now.